Hello, Christopher.
Hi.
Let me welcome you to our webinar about Apqp, the new edition which was released in 2024. So quite fresh, new edition. We'll try to discuss if these changes are evolution or revolution for the standard, which already is not new, yes, from the 90s of last century. In the meanwhile, let's wait for the people who are still joining to our webinar. I hope everyone who is joining will say hello and write the name, location from where they are joining to us, because it will be very nice to maybe learn a little bit more about people who are coming with the interest to hear us tonight. We are broadcasting tonight on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So there might be some delays between the platforms when you will be asking some questions, which we encourage you actually to raise your questions on the chat, and we'll try to answer you as much as possible tonight. If there will be more questions, we will come back to you in the social media. Okay, Christopher. Do we have a lot of people on the LinkedIn? Can you have a look?
From what I can check, so let me have a check 1 second.
Already we have some Facebook users from United States. Just for your information, for Facebook, you need to allow to StreamYard to display your name and surname, and unless you will be anonymous. Okay, we have also Andrzej with us from Poland. We have also Mehantesh. Yeah, very difficult name for me. Who else is with us?
So far, we've got 54 people. 55 it's climbing. So
okay.
Good so far. It's great. It's really good.
Great, and also Facebook and YouTube. Great. Okay, we have also Gabor from UK. Yeah. So you're growing, still growing. Okay,
rapidly growing.
Yes. Keep going with writing from where are you from and what is your name and this and maybe your scope of the responsibilities in the organizations, and we'll just keep going with the topic because there is I think pretty many things which we could say tonight, but we, as I can see, we have really quite different locations, yes, from different parts of the world. Okay, so Christopher, are we ready maybe to start tonight?
Yeah, why not? Let's dive into it.
Okay, so for tonight, we prepare for you a presentation that you could also see what are these changes, yes, what happened with the latest Apqp. Apqp is quite important because this is regarded as one of the core tools, yes, which are mandatory to be used by the automotive organizations, also in terms of auditing, especially for auditors who needs to be familiarized with core tools. Let's start this discussion. If we have evolution or revolution, later we will ask you this question. So we are quite curious about this, or how you will treat these changes, what is happening. Yes. Okay. At the very beginning, before we'll start, we would like to introduce ourselves, because maybe not everyone knows QualityWise. QualityWise is a company which is giving you the services in automotive industry in terms of assuring quality by auditing, by trainings, and also consulting. I'm a founder. My name is Agata Lewkowska. I'm associated with the automotive industry since 2007, so it's quite a long time. I really love working with the quality management system. That's why these requirements and core tools are also for me quite interesting. And I'm also the auditor in IATF in VDA 6.3. Also, I'm an academic lecturer. But tonight with me, I have Christopher. Christopher is also experienced quality expert in automotive industry. Christopher, maybe you will introduce yourself.
Yeah, so thanks, Agata. So my name is Christopher Scott, and I'm the head of quality at Charge Cars, which is a UK luxury automotive manufacturer. I've been in the automotive industry for more than 14 years in quality functions. I specialize in supplier product and process development using Apqp and PPAP, which is the topic of tonight. I specialize also in root cause analysis, crisis management. I'm also trained as a lead auditor in first party and second party for ISO 9001 and IATF. And I'm an expert within something called train within industry. So this is how to train a trainer, or standard operating procedures.
Okay, so I hope no one is in doubt that you have here a good host to take this topic on the shoulders. Okay, so let's start with Apqp. Christopher, as you said, you're advanced with this. Just do an introduction.
Yeah, so what is Apqp? So basically it stands for Advanced Product Quality Planning, and it's used mainly within the automotive industry. And the idea is that you have a customer. Your customer is typically an OEM, or it might be a supplier above you, and they have an idea. And that idea could be a product, it could be a component, and that idea is then transferred to the supplier to see what their requirements would be or how they would produce the product. That's the idea. So the product is produced by the supplier, it's proposed to the customer, and the customer will then review, and does it meet the quality requirements, the cost requirements, budget, and so on? Does it meet its design intent? And the idea is that we have customer satisfaction. So if we have an idea, the supplier proposes, creates the product, and the customer is to be satisfied. This is based on something called Plan, Do, Check, Act, which you'll see in 9001. You'll see that in IATF. It's a main tool that you use for planning a product or a change, essentially.
Okay, so generally, let's start from the basic, because as I mentioned to you, I really love working with the quality management system, because also thanks to this, we know what we have to do to assure the quality in the automotive industry. So I would like to ask you the basic question tonight. Is Apqp required by the quality management system requirements according to IATF 16949? How do you think? Is it a mandatory approach for project management in automotive industry? Or maybe you are doing something different. Yes, we'll just comment this, what you will write in a second on the chat. Take this possibility because we are quite curious how this is said by the requirements of the quality management system. There are more than 82,000 organizations around the world which are certified in IATF. So I believe that here a lot of people will tell us.
So we're starting to get some answers from some people.
Yes, yes. Okay, we have first answers. Yes, mandatory. Okay, this is the first answer. Is there any other view? We have 11 OEMs. Yes,
got another one from YouTube, which says it's not required unless the customer said so. Amanda.
Okay. Interesting answer. Is there anything else? Oh, Ricardo. Hello, Ricardo from Mexico. What else? Apqp is not mandatory. MLA can be used. Okay, so we have another approach. MLA, this is actually German approach. Maybe you can recognize it as VDA RGA, also called, yes, Reifegradabsicherung in German. MLA is maturity level assurance, yes. Okay, some companies make their own tracker to track the project based on Apqp. Okay, what Neil is writing, not mandatory unless mandated by the customer. Yes, Apqp itself is not a requirement, but a structured and a systematic approach to develop product and production process is required. Okay, this is really interesting. It is up to customer-specific requirements. Oh, this is really nice answer. I like it, Oskan. Depends on the CSRs. Andrzej says the same. Good answer. Or the organization. Yes, may happen. We have Brazil. Oh, quite far away from us. And what else? Which answers? Some of the customer can have their own requirements. Customer requirements. Yeah, that's true. Oh, we have also Istanbul.
Istanbul, yeah, nice.
I'm displaying all the answers, but between the answers, we have still the greetings from different parts of the world. So it's also very nice to see that you are joining the webinar. Yet if it's saying to engage core tools. Okay, so I think we shall go straight to the point. Yes.
Yes.
Actually, a lot of answers were really interesting and showed that you're aware of this, what is happening. So first of all, there was really one answer. I think Oscar gave this, that it is not said straight in IATF that we have to use Apqp. Yes, and let's have a look. That's why how it is said. This is the clause where IATF is saying about just establishing in the multidisciplinary approach a project management. And please pay attention how this is written. This is written, for example, and is giving examples of two approaches. Apqp, yes, one which we are interested tonight, and VDA RGA, so the German approach. And this is as an example. So this means that actually there is no such requirement, yes? This is our decision. Okay. Our decision, maybe it's too much to say, because a lot of people said straight, it also depends on the customer specific requirements. And many of the OEMs have actually, in fact, this CSRs defined, because this is too important topic, just not to formalize the approach, yes. And the world is more or less divided, like German OEMs want VDA RGA, and the rest of the OEMs want Apqp, yes, with some maybe modification, yes, like RSA, for instance. Okay, so please bear in mind that we don't have to follow Apqp straight coming from IATF, okay? Because this, what I'm observing when I'm auditing, people are interpreting this this point like, yes, we have to have Apqp. No, not at all. Yes. And also there were some answers like this depends on our own requirements. Yes, but let's remember the privilege always have customer specific requirements. Okay. Then if there are no such customer specific requirements, but I believe that I can assure you that there are, we can go further. Also, there was one comment that in some organization we can transform Apqp to develop our own approach. If customer agrees on this, it's also fine. Yes, and I'm observing that it's happening. This is a common practice. Okay. So we know right now how it is. We have also one comment from Ricardo. Many non-automotive customers have adopted AAG Apqp and make it a mandatory for their suppliers. Yes, to cascade in the supply chain. Yes. Okay. So generally, we everything what we are talking now, it's about project management, yes? Like Christopher said, everything is built upon PDCA, yes? Planning, scheduling, implementation, control, task accounting. This is our goal, yes? To, at the end, have this project management in some regime, like having the right scope, time, project costs and quality. Yes, these are the main dimensions. But we, of course, will not discuss in detail what is inside Apqp, because this is not our goal tonight. We would like to proceed to these changes. Yes. However, let's remember that everything what you are seeing here is the basic. And please remember about this slide, because this will be reflected further, especially these dimensions. Yes, because they were not emphasized so much in the second edition. Okay. What is happening in terms of changes with Apqp timing chart? Christopher, I'm displaying this for you. I'm giving you the voice.
Yeah, so it's clear that in this audience that we have people that are experiencing Apqp, or at least a cycle of from development all the way through to SOP or manufacturing. But to explain to those who aren't fully aware of it, it's in 5 phases. Those 5 phases start from concept initiation or approval, which is the planning phase. It moves on to program approval, which is your product design and development, as well as overlapping in parallel your process design and development. One of the new change content is not from the prototype phase or gateway, at least that phase itself, is the design model. So not every OEM, not every customer will prototype. Sometimes they will simulate. They will simulate into CAD. They'll do it into a virtual build or something, and they won't necessarily make a prototype component because it's too expensive to do that. So that's been added into APQP version 3. We've got product process validation. That hasn't really changed too much. We have a pilot stage, which is your production trials, your off-tool, off-process, moving into production, your ramp-up, and then you have your launch. So it hasn't really changed too much in terms of the actual layout of the diagram. The diagram is pretty much the same. The main changing point that I've noticed through actually looking through the change content is the design model, which, as I've said, depending on your organization, you can't just throw a lot of money towards lots of cars, a lot of products, lots of motorcycles. So you might do a lot of design simulation work up front before you decide to do any prototyping.
Okay, so this is about more or less polishing a little bit wording, and that everyone is now really informed that prototyping is not a mandatory. Yes, it depends also on the project. But anyway, design models might be more relevant for some organizations. Okay, so generally, do you use APQP? Is it your scope of the responsibilities? Yes. Do you know very well the second edition requirements? Yes, because we would like to go further with the comparisons. Yes, with this, what we prepare for you. And we would like to hear your voice if you really know very well this. If we have here also automotive auditors, internal, second party, maybe even third party, of course, due to the requirements, you have to be familiarized, yes? So now we need to only adjust this, what we will hear from the third edition, yes, to our knowledge. Okay, so changes and updates. Yeah, this will be interesting now. Christopher, what do we have here?
Yeah, so some 3 pillars, really, 3 main changes about the whole thing in terms of APQP. One of them is for program management, looking at gated management or gateways. This is also including risk mitigation and APQP process KPIs. So that's a part of that group or that pillar. The next pillar is the sourcing strategy. Again, it's using a gated management approach. It's using something new, which is called a sourcing risk checklist. So there is a checklist. I think it's around about 70 points, maybe 70 to 80 questions, which is quite comprehensive, of your supplier sourcing for your new and existing suppliers. It's not meant to be for just your new suppliers. It's meant to be for the ones you're currently working with as well. And the focus update is to be equal to supplier readiness. So there's a bit of change in terminology. So it's increased the importance of that element. And then finally, the third pillar is the clarification. So this is for change management, error and mistake proofing, the differences between the two, traceability requirements, and OEE capacity planning. So again, there's been some uplift, because in my previous companies that I've worked for, they were already doing these things. And APQP revision 3 is catching up to what the OEMs are mandating their suppliers to do through customer-specific requirements.
Yeah, I really like that we have here these clarifications, because previously, when I was doing trainings, we were talking only about mistake proofing according to the second edition. There was no wording like error proofing, but the idea is completely different, yes?
Yeah.
So always I needed to do extra clarification. But on the other hand, in IATF, we are using error proofing, yes? Of course, we need to avoid creating the mistakes and wastes, but mistake proofing was not used as a term itself. So it's really good that we have this clarification and this OE capacity planning. This is also a good point, I must tell you, from my opinion, my personal subjective opinion. But let's have a look what is also happening here. The gate management. The gate management is really a strong point, and let me tell you in details what how it's working now. Let's stick to this APQP timing chart, yes, and suddenly we have a gate management. And this gate management is, of course, associated with the certain phases of APQP, like we had even before in the second edition. However, it was not explicitly said that we are closing some gates. It was, of course, when we were doing a planning in this zero phase, we could have a milestones definition if we decided that this will be important for our organization. Yes. However, now we are talking about certain 6 gates which has to be managed, and the 6 gateways, all of them require some checklists. And this is a novelty, really, in fact, because this is a formal approach how we shall keep going in our projects. So I really liked VDMLA, and in fact, me personally, I preferred that approach because it was much more formalized, and in such quality planning, advanced quality planning, it was extremely important to have everything defined. This was my opinion, yes. And in Apqp, I did not find this, what suddenly in the third revision we can observe. Suddenly it's again, like in VDA MLA, a summary of some certain points, yes, like in here, it's called gate management, yes. So it's working like that. In the Appendix B, we'll find gateway checklists, which can be for you a hint how this gate management could be proceeded. However, the organizations can develop their own approach, yes. But generally, gate management should be present currently since this third edition. We have here a comment like gate management is like gate review after every phase. Yes, exactly. In other words, milestones. Yes, we are closing on a certain milestones, some project elements, project phase. Yes. Okay. So this is really big thing. What else do we have? Christopher, you like working with supply chain.
Tier N suppliers, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So is Apqp cascaded to tier ends, meaning you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 till whatever level, all the way up the supply chain, not down the supply chain. So is it cascaded? That's the question, really. To the group, you know, if you can put your answer in, do you think it's cascaded fully to the supply chain, to the tier ends, the 1, 2, 3s, or do you think it's not, or maybe sort of,
or other way around?
Yeah.
Did you cascade your requirements in the supply chain when you were doing Apqp? This is really the question, which I would say a difficulty for the organization. Yes.
I would say the majority of the people in this webinar probably works for a tier 1, tier 2 supplier. I don't think there'll be many OEMs. Hopefully there is. That'd be great, and there'll be a shout out to whoever's from those companies. But yeah, typically the OEM will cascade the requirements to their tier 1. But it'd be interesting to see who in the call has cascaded those requirements into their supply chain.
I don't see that. There are some answers. If not,
we got. That's a good one.
Yes. If not, it should be. Yes. Why? Why it should be? Andre is writing. Depends on the risks, feasibility, price of components. Oh, this is good approach. I like it, Andre. Very, very nice answer. I request to use the Apqp during second-party audits. Okay, so this is in the context of auditing. Yes. Okay. So let's go further. Christopher, how it is with these OEMs and the requirements?
So how is it with OEMs in reality right now, as of today, based on my experience, personal experience working for 3 different OEMs? So you have your requirements. This is your Apqp or your version of Apqp that the customer will have. It's cascaded into the tier 1, and then the tier 2 is to cascade the requirements to the tier ends, tier 2s. That's what it's supposed to be. In reality, though, it's not. So the tier 1 is responsible in most cases when you're dealing with a customer-supplier relationship to cascade the requirements. But in most cases, the tier 1s don't do this. They don't cascade your dimensional results for like PPAP, or they don't cascade any phases and so on. Whereas Apqp revision 3 requires each tier to fully cascade the requirements to the next supplier upstream. Again, there's some interesting comments to say, about cost and so on. But ultimately, that's the requirement. If the customer has specified that, then it needs to be cascaded fully. And I can say as of today, that's not the case. So that might be the bigger impact or change from working with revision 2 to revision 3, especially from a cost and efficiency perspective. It means your suppliers might not be sourced because they have no idea about Apqp, and then they need to be trained, and that might take them off your sourcing list. So there's more effort in that, but really, if it's cascaded correctly, it means that everyone understands what the requirements are for the contract, for the drawings, for the phases, for what good looks like and how you get to launch. I've worked with a lot of suppliers in the past, especially more recently, where they have no idea about Apqp. They've never worked with it, and that is quite a hindrance, and that's quite a problem, because then you have to train maybe 100 suppliers in the Apqp requirements. So the idea is that Apqp is a standardized approach. So we're speaking the same language. That's the point.
Yes, this is, I would say, a big change, really,
Yeah,
because
that's the biggest
of course,
change, I think.
when we are talking about the OEM and tier one, we have really very complex, mostly complex products, yes, which are sold to OEMs. However, down the supply chain, there are 3, 4, 5 maybe. The projects are less complex. Maybe these are very simple components, maybe, I don't know, some molding parts. And the scope of the Apqp also may differ, yes. However, some certain elements will be present, should be present, yes. Let me display a few interesting comments. Andrzej, huge work for the purchasing to force the suppliers and to make the correct quality agreement. Yes, that's true. But let's maybe stick a little bit to the German market. In German market, it is a requirement, yes, especially Horse with Volkswagen. There is no excuse. You have to cascade the requirements, which are in formal queues. So in other words, also, if formal queue requires VDA MLA, you need to perform VDA MLA down the supply chain. Simply, yes. Of course, it's very easy to say. However, the practice shows different exceptions, which I'm observing during auditing different companies. However, this is the frame agreement, yes, like we are doing. So, Andrzej, you're thinking correctly, and of course, I cannot disagree with you. This is for the purchasing, yes. What else? We did when I was still at QM many years ago, but some suppliers pushed back. Yeah, what else? For the cascading issue, can you please comment or clarify how to handle imagining I am tier 3 and I am I'm in the supply chain, so I have to identify OEM requirements and other tier 2 and so on, right?
So I can probably answer a little bit on this.
Yeah.
It's a very specific question, and maybe it's something that I can answer outside of this webinar directly to you, Marcelo. But from my perspective as a customer and as working as a supplier, it's like quality assurance. You have to treat each level as a customer. So your tier 1 is the customer of the tier 2. The tier 2 is the customer of the tier 3. You have to identify what's good for the business size, because some people will literally be a very small factory, maybe 1 or 2 people that work in this supply, and it all depends on the supply size of your organization. But ultimately, the tier 1 needs to cascade the requirements down, well, up into the supply chain. I think a lot of tier 3s and tier 4s and tier 5s don't necessarily understand the customer requirement, because they just sell off-the-shelf products. It all depends on what you make. Are you developing a product? Are you design responsible? Or is it something which is off the shelf? Like, for example, this is not obviously automotive, but like an earplug, safety protection, that you buy these in your billions. It depends on what you make, really. But I can clarify that separately.
Yeah. Okay. Also, Marcelo has another comment. Only then, if we don't have clear answer, we can use our own method and not OEMs or tier. And for example,
if it's agreed by the customer, that's the point of customer-specific requirements. So if you say to your customer, I use this VDA method, or I use an agile method, or I use whatever, is this acceptable? They will say yes or no, or they'll say you can use a hybrid. It depends on what their milestones are and what their key achievements need to be to get a product to launch. So it's always the most important thing. The message to take away is have the conversation. Never assume that it's available. Like, for example, if you talk about customer-specific requirements that are published by OEMs, they're not the only customer-specific requirements that are to the organization. There are ones that with your supplier quality engineer at the customer and the supplier, that there's hidden agreements as well that need to be defined. So don't only rely on what's publicized. You have to speak to the customers really to understand, or the tier ones, the tier twos, the tier threes. You have to have that conversation.
This is what I said at the very beginning with the German market and cascading, even in the approach of VDMLA, the requirements. The more, another word, the farther you are from the OEM, the requirements are more blurred, you know?
Yeah, this is true. This is very true. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And Andrzej, how about the suppliers posed by the customers, directed by? Oh, Andrzej, this is difficult topic. Directed by is always difficult, but generally, during the audit, what a third-party auditor will say: no excuses. The only exclusions from the requirements is about the supplier sourcings. Other requirements are still applicable. So no difference if this is customer direct. If this is customers
directed by, directed source. Yeah. I think the only advice I can give on that from a customer perspective is get something called a RASIC or a RACI chart, where you've got that formal agreement in place when you do your contract review. Again, never assume, because again, like Agatha says, a third party auditor will score against you if you don't have something formalized. If you don't have anything written and it's not in a contract or it's not in a RASIC chart, then it's your responsibility.
There's also one comment from Facebook user. From my experience, even that it is hard for some tiers to meet some criteria. The idea to use a method such as Apqp may void in advance some production and quality control in tiers down and stream or supply chain. Yeah. Okay, let's keep going with this. So as you can see, generally, this is an, let's say, revolution, is formalized revolution, what in contrary to the second edition. And this might be a difficult task, yes, for some organizations, especially more smaller and with less complex products. Okay, supplier sourcing. This is also another change which is significant. How do you think how it was before in your project management? Did you pay accurate attention to the supplier sourcing?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people in this conversation is probably going to be from a quality background, and we may have some people from supply chain, some people from purchasing. In my experience, a lot of sourcing, especially in smaller organizations, have been led by purchasing, and you don't technically have a supply quality development or quality assurance function. Not always. It depends how big the company is, but usually the responsibility of supplier sourcing is done by a purchasing organization or a department. So the question really is that what you currently use in your organization, or do you have some sort of SQA, supplier quality assurance function, that does that role, or SQD? That would be the question, really.
Yeah. So you may answer still on the chat, but let's proceed here, because this is a change.
Yeah, it's quite a big change.
New third edition really put emphasis on supplier sourcing, which was not present that much. I don't want to say hardly present in the second edition. However, here it's really emphasized. Okay, what we have here, Christopher.
So yeah, again, some major changes in terms of how that works. So the idea is that section 0.5 sourcing, there's new and existing suppliers to be assessed, as I highlighted earlier when we were going through the Apqp timeline. That's quite a big change, because some people, when they're preferred supplier and they're nominated and everything seems to be fine, you will just automatically nominate them into the next project if they're cost competitive and they have good quality. So there's that. The checklist is to be completed and confirmed for supplier capabilities as per CQI section 19. So it's based on that as well. So that's quite a change. High risk supply evaluation. So this is not should, or an example, an organization must have a method of identifying high risk suppliers. And it can't really be based on opinion. It has to be based on facts and data. So how do you measure your suppliers? How do you monitor that they're good or bad? Are they good in purchasing? Are they good at cost? Do they have lots of rework? Do they stop your production line a lot? How do you measure high risk? Do they have capacity issues and so on? So moving on to the next one, it's going to explain what is the minimum criteria for this risk assessment. So this is the requirements. If it's a new supplier to your organization, if it's a new location or site, meaning if you have one production site in Morocco and you want to use a new site in Spain, that's technically a new location or new site. So that meets the criteria. Just because the supply in Morocco is really good and the manufacturing site doesn't mean that the other one is going to be just as good. So that's a key point. New technology. So if you've upgraded your facilities and you're using new machinery, new technology, and so on, again, that is a risk. That's a risk to the program. Poor quality history. That's if you know they've got a bad quality history. If you've never worked with a supplier before, you might know that there's product recalls on their company. So you can do a research. You can find out which suppliers have caused issues, which ones haven't. If your components have any safety or regulatory requirements. So I mean, this goes without saying, but if it has a safety implication, like it's a crash structure or it's an airbag or whatever, that has a requirement. And regulatory, again, that could be down to emissions, it could be down to safety standards, it could be down to homologation or local markets. That's the requirement. And then finally, if the supplier does not have ISO 9001 or IATF accreditation. So this is the main criteria that you need to work towards for risk assessments on your supplier evaluations.
Actually, when for those of you who are working with the German market and are following VDE 6.3, even we have potential analysis. So you can now have a feeling that the supplier sourcing is putting Apqp a little bit closer to this, like a German approach for project management was doing previously, yes. And also in German approach, we have the classification of the risks. And suddenly this is also present here, the same idea, yes. Okay, KPIs. This is interesting. Never before there was no single word about KPIs established. Of course, from the QMS requirements stated in IATF 16949, we could expect that we shall monitor the project management, yes, progress. And we need to, of course, have some reporting, even as an input for management review. So this was not present before in our quality management system. However, now in Apqp, from the Apqp source of the requirements, we will also meet the need for the certain key process indicators. And what are these KPIs? Simply, we are talking now on time, so the finalizing the project on time, in specification, and also in budget, yes? Of course, in specification, in other words, it's according to the quality requirements, yes? This is what our customer wants from us. So this is exactly what Christopher was talking at the very beginning, yes? The customer has an idea, is coming to us, to us as a suppliers, and we're proposing to him some product, which later is going to come back to the customer as his satisfaction. And these key performance indicators are, of course, especially these 2.1, are very connected with our customers, yes, because customers who expect that we'll be ready on the certain moment of time with our product for him, yes. In budget, this is more or less relevant maybe for our sponsors, which in fact in our organizations, this is top management, yes. These are our monies, yes. So we need to be efficient, yes, while doing project management. So no wonder, yes. Also during auditing in many organizations, I saw a lot of project management which was exceeding a budget, and it was exceeding like even 10 times, really. Millions of dollars, euros were spent, were wasted because of bad project management, unfortunately. So for me, this is actually a good information that we will have this KPIs in new edition. And these are critical success factors for our Apqp. Of course, before in the second edition, we could also have them applied. However, now they are mandatory. Yes, they are mandatory to be in use completely, these 3 indicators. Before, it was optional if we would like to do it. So it was also depending on our maturity in the organization, how wise we are, and how our culture is created to really monitor this, what is happening in the projects. Yes. Okay. Now, I think the very important thing, APQP checklists. Who of you saw or used or audited the APQP checklists, which were attached to the in appendixes in the second edition? This is interesting because honestly, I have never seen them. But maybe someone will really surprise me and say, yes, in my organization, we were doing, or still are doing, APQP checklists.
Yeah, so this is to the chat. Let's see who's brave enough maybe to answer. Let's see. I'm sure someone has used them maybe.
Yeah. We have some comments here, like it is good to see an electronic and LED luminaries industries have begun to utilize APQP methodology since some years. Besides, we were already familiar with all these KPIs thanks to Percy's approach and good good auditors. Yeah, good that we have had external motivation to use KPIs like auditors. There is an answer. I have seen the check of applicable output data after each phase. Yeah, okay. We have in my former organization, Tier 1 German supplier, we have used APQP checklist. Andre wrote, yes, we use adopted to our needs. Okay, it's good that you adopted them. What else? We have here a comment from Marchlo. Yes, in my organization, we used to have them checklists. Yes. Okay. And yes, we were adopting KPQ checklists. That was already a requirement since 2004. I was not lucky to to visit your organizations to see and they were applicable because really I haven't seen them being applied. Neil, I have seen them used when auditing, but the underlying substance wasn't always there. Yeah, good.
So maybe maybe a question back to Neil. Do you mean people do it and fill them out, but they don't actually have the evidence or data behind the actual checklist? Is that what you mean by that? Because if that's the case, I've seen suppliers do that in my career so far, where they do the checklist for the sake of doing the checklist, but they don't actually do the work. So I've seen that happen before.
Okay, what is the effectiveness of the actions and their verification? Another comment, how do we treat design changes in terms of APQP KPI fulfillment? This may be managed also in terms of IATF, and actually this what is introduced here in this APQP third revision is very close to this, what is required by the system requirements in IATF. Okay, and the last question, poor data evidence, yes. Okay, so let's keep going because this is also something important to say. What is the change about this checklist? So generally, we must emphasize that these are the checklists which are present in the third edition. We have 11 checklists. In the second edition, we had only 8. So which one are new? Risk factor, change management, and sourcing. Yes. Risk factor checklist is really a general checklist, like to make us aware if there are any risks. So we are incorporating risk-based thinking in our APQP, which was not that present before. Actually, I don't remember that it was present in that way. Like I understand risk management, not by doing design FMEA or PFMEA. It is just a pure risk management in each phase. Yes. And these risk factors are connected to also actions proposed to mitigate the risks, to address some strategies to work with these risks, and later to emphasize if actions were implemented, yes, to conclude if we did what we were supposed to do. Change management, as I mentioned already, is really very close to this what we have in IATF. So actually, it's starting from the general question: do we have a process for change management established? Of course, in IATF, we also need to have a documented process for change management. Yes. So it's when we go to this checklist, it's like around 11, 12 questions. It's I had the impression that this is really like repeating the requirements from the IATF, yes. And the sourcing is really a significant change and significant checklist. It's exceptional due to the length. 78 questions gathered in different areas like quality capabilities of the suppliers, manufacturing capabilities, system, commercial, technological approach, really a lot of aspects. So this is good, really. This is really good. But I believe that it is not new for a lot of organizations because it's, in my opinion, also close to the approach like we did in our organization, maybe in request for information or quotation, where we also have a similar list of the questions which was sent to the suppliers for the answers. There is also one change, which actually, Christopher, we did not prepare the slide for this because we touched almost every significant changes which are here in this third edition. But there's one more, and now I realize we did not prepare for this. Leadership, involvement, accountability, taking the responsibility for kicking off the project, being a part of the project, being involved on different stages. So maybe this is, we can now say gate management in terms of leadership involvement. Before we had, of course, top management treated as the side interested party, let's call them like that, which should be informed in terms when we would have some, if we had some bottlenecks, some resource constraints, and so on, but not that involved just as a team which is taking really accountability on the for the final result. Yes. Yeah. Christopher, anything else?
No, I think that's a key emphasis as well, is especially management. You hear a lot or you read a lot in 9001 and other management systems, not just quality management systems, where it says top management shall be responsible for, and then top management believe that if they delegate that responsibility to a quality manager or to someone who's an SQA or someone that's in design, that they're not responsible. That's not the case. So maybe some of your key takeaways of today's webinar is more about the alignment to IATF, the alignment of what the OEMs are already doing. Some suppliers that might be in this webinar might be shocked or might be thinking, oh, this is unfair, or these requirements are too harsh. But it's like anything in the world. When you move from one regulation to the next as we advance as a civilization, quality assurance is the same. These things are in place because there's been regulation fines, or there's been recalls, or there's been issues. And the OEMs are finding ways to have lessons learned, and they're building those lessons learned into Apqp, into IATF. That's the reason for why they're doing it. It might be harder, but it makes a better product, a better process. That's the point of doing it. You don't necessarily have to do every single thing in Apqp. The things that say must or shall, of course, you need to do them. But like I said before, you need to always consult with the OEM, the tier 1, the tier 2, whichever level is your customer. You need to understand the requirements.
Also, to just at the end to say what is new. Of course, the update of the language. We are using the same wording like in IATF. The current state of the art, like cybersecurity, is present. Services are present. Yes. What else? We had also these activities which were not before stated, like even the sourcing. So the current state of the art is really reflected now. let's say more or less, because still APQP is general, and it has to be general because it has to be applicable for almost all the kind of industry, yes, the technologies. So generally, if I would summarize, there are really some nice changes, like this sourcing activities, this leadership involvement, gate reviews, and cascading of the requirements. And honestly, this might be really a case for some organizations, like even Christopher emphasized this. But I think this will be beneficial for all of us. Yes, we all are users of our vehicles. Yes. Okay. So this was actually almost everything what we wanted to tell you about the changes. At the end, I hope you really enjoyed this webinar, and you have now really a good picture what is the biggest concern right now. Yes, what is the shift from second edition to the third edition? And we of course encourage you to deep dive into this, what we said in few minutes, like half an hour. So still there is more to learn from your side. Yes. We have a comment from Marcher, APQP adoption, some non-official infos. So that Stellantis, for example, has an adoption period of 6 months, but not it is not clear for a new project. Should we wait for CSRs or other communication, any roadmap? Of course, always until official communication, no official requirements. Yes, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. Yeah.
But this is a good point. Yes, but of course, pay attention to the OEMs who are stating that they are adopting documents, manuals in the latest edition. Of course, there is one I remember still in my head, which is, I would say, maybe my favorite one. Volkswagen in formal cues stating simply about the latest state of the art, which is implying using the latest version, but not relevant to APQP, of course, because they require VDMLA. However, on this example, I wanted to make you aware that if you have the statements like using, adopting latest state of the art, this means also that with such a new revision of the portal of any manual, yes, reference book, you always need to update yourself, yes, in the organization. Pay attention, my dear auditors in automotive industry. This is for you also an occasion to update your skills, yes, because if something there are some changes, there is a requirement that you have to be updated. Okay, and that's why maybe at the end I wanted to invite you for the new APQP training from third edition by QualityWise, which I will conduct on 18th and 19th of April. If you feel that there is still more knowledge in detail which you would like to gain for yourself. Okay, at the end, if you enjoy QualityWise, this is what we are preparing for you, either on these webinars or articles which we are doing, or newsletters what we are doing. Recently, Christopher joined me. I wanted to invite you to create with me also and QualityWise. If you feel yourself you would like to develop some new possibilities for yourself. If you would like to work with us, just get in touch and we'll discuss the possibilities. Just remember, we are open for any forms of the cooperation with you, like even the sharing knowledge and inviting you for such webinars. It will be good for all the society of the automotive suppliers and OEMs as well, to have the big awareness, yes. At the end, I saw some also nice questions on the way, which I did not display. Like here, Paulo, supplier selection and monitoring is detailed in IATF section 8.4. What else is needed? Paulo, this is a good comment. However, let's remember that now we are talking about different sources of the requirements. If we are talking about the IATF, definitely 8.4 is really very well developed chapter, where we have not only monitoring, not only selection, but also auditing the suppliers, development of the QMS of the suppliers, yes, the information which need to be cascaded down the supply chain, yes, statutory and regulatory requirements cascading, also special characteristics being more precise and in details. So such informations are not put in such detail in Apqp. However, Apqp is working together on some levels with also system requirements. And when we will be discussing in Apqp the quality planning, yes, there will be some system questions in that checklist where we also could say that here we need to prepare our system. Yes.
I would
What
add
else?
to that as well. Like, it's just finally on that, we need to remember that not every supplier will have IATF right now. They might have ISO 9001, and their customer is mandated them to use Apqp and PPAP. So even though, so IATF obviously has stricter requirements as an automotive quality management system, but not every supplier as a minimum works to IATF. Some of them only work to 9001 because they've got that, and that's fairly easier, relatively easier compared to 16949. So that could be the difference as well, where the suppliers don't have that built into their quality management system for the regular monitoring and so on. So you need to bear that in mind. Not every supplier will be at IATF level.
Close to this answer, we have also a question from Marcel. Q1. Since Apqp is now separated from control plan, is control plan to be used instead of attachment A or of IATF, or not necessarily? Very good question. Extremely good question, I would say. No. This what is in IATF will be always relevant and still valid even if we have a new manual. Let's remember that we have certain requirements in point 8511 for control plan, and this point is also referring to Appendix A. And let's also remember that some OEMs will not require from us, from their supply chains, to have AIAG approach manuals implemented. And of course, now I'm referring to the German market. So let's we can't say that for a German market we only have to use Appendix A in IATF. No, this is relevant for every QMS, yes, and working with quality management system. However, again, this is a gap in statement, yes, what our customer wants. So still, let's maybe wait a little bit. What will happen with the CSRs? How the CSRs will develop in terms of really mandating to compulsory use of the control plans, yes. Yeah, so I have now a thought. Maybe there is a need to organize another webinar which will be concentrated on the control plan only. You can write on the chat if this is really a need for you. Angie is also writing, and to remember that this is only in the project management later on. You do not know what is going on with the suppliers. Yeah.
Great point. That is a great point, because if you're only doing Apqp and PPAP only for design and development into SOP afterwards, I mean, you should know there's something wrong with your supplier if they keep sending you no good parts, or if they keep stopping your production line. But it's a great point. It is a great point.
Okay, so I have also some answers. Great idea with this control plan. Yes, and yes, please. Okay, yeah, this will be good. We will think. Yeah. And I'm also very interested in this, what is happening right now about control plans. So why not sharing this with quality-wise society? Yes. Okay. I don't see more More questions? Yes, control plan webinar. Yeah, I don't see. So generally, I see your feedback. Yes,
Lots
you
of
want
yeses.
to
Yeah,
have
lots of
you
yeses.
want to have this webinar about the control plan. Okay, so we have 9 p.m. Here in Poland, at least in Central Europe. So I think it's time maybe to close our webinar. Let me appreciate all your presence here. Some of you are in different time zones, so really thank you that you joined with us. We have also some other comments with appreciation. Thank you, Gabor. So thank you for joining. We really hope this was helpful for you. If you have more questions, which we did not touch tonight, you can still write to us in the social media, and we'll try to respond, yes, to this, what is needed. Remember, if you want, you can join our training on the new edition of Apqp on 18th and 19th, April. And we will go in detail what is happening in the third revision of Apqp. So thank you, Christopher, for joining me tonight. And I wish all of you a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you all.